Hey guys, it is Chad here from the Battle Warrior Podcast, and I'm just letting all you listeners know that the Battle Warrior Podcast episodes will be available across all podcast platforms, guys. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this brand new episode today.
Sorry, I'm going off.
No. For me, and brutally honest, man, last year I was in phenomenal shape. This year I added in training back into it. Last year was my first year I started running again. So I did cross country in high school during the summer or during the fall, jacked up my shins. I broke my shins 2 years in a row. So throughout my 20s, I'm like, I can't play this because I have bad shins. I can't. So I use that as excuse. And finally, I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to put some goals down and start doing it. So I started, ended up doing a 5K veteran run actually last Memorial Day. And I got addicted back into training again. So like I went back down to, okay, I'm running 10th of a mile. I'm running 25 quarter of a mile. I'm running half a mile. And ended up being, I just went through it. And funny thing is someone talked trash to me and she's like, hey, jump in. You want to man up? You man up, join me in the half marathon. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I ended up, and during the process, what ended up happening is I was launching my podcast a couple years ago. To make a story short, I ended up getting around a lot of alphas. And they're like, dude, you have to document your way throughout this whole thing. And
that's awesome, dude.
Yeah. And what was happening was I didn't look at the video. So like I'm in my workout gear, man. I don't give a shit today. We're doing a podcast. Whatever. We show up to fire and in this stuff. But
what matters is the impact that is generated from it. I don't give a shit about the threads that we wear.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? There's a multiple thing for this. So like the people that haven't did fitness before, that I want them to show exactly what I do, how I do it, and what I eat. Secondly, what I wanted was, this is more audio and camera time. So like, this is free media work. This is free camera work with me. So when it comes to that stuff, I'm like, I'm going to get comfortable behind the camera because I knew at that time I was kind of writing a book, but I didn't know when or how. And ended up being, I laced into it and I missed that girl by 0.2 of a second in that race because and I remember this plainly to the point I walked up and I'm like, hey, good luck. And she's like, I waited 2 years for this and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to beat you, whatever. And she turned around. And she's like, yeah, all right, whatever. And that's when I tee off. I'm like, okay, this is going down. And I ended up walking back a few sections because I didn't know my time. And I hit the 12th mile and I started seeing her in the distance. I'm like, oh, let's close the gap, and ended up going to like the quarter mile. And I'm like, okay, she's 100 yards in front of me. We made the straight shot. So what it is, it was like an L. So like you ran straight and then you turned into the finish. I saw the straight shot. I saw her. I took off like I was in cross country, like the adrenaline kicked in. Ended up being, she was like 5 feet ahead of me. Technically, if you look at like the 2/10 section, she ran. She didn't even know I was right behind her. She turned around and went, shit. Crossed the finish line. I was right behind her and I took off. I'm like, good. You know, I looked at her. I'm like, hey, congratulations, whatever. And she kind of shrugged her shoulders. And the best thing about it is her mom was standing right there at the end. And her mom knew me from little on. And I'm going to keep her quiet. Her name is, but she didn't know I knew her parents for like 20 years. So like, I just blew right by them, just kind of went and just, when it comes to this stuff, when I know I beat the mindset, I actually just go sit by a tree and just kind of get roll observed, where I'm just like, you know, guys, thank you very much, whatever. But like, I get very humble and I just sit by a tree because I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know, it's like, to me, it's a goal that I need to accomplish by myself. So this year, what it is in that 8-week time frame, I did a half marathon, a 15K and a 10K, and I kind of went downhill. So like ended up getting hurt again. Just shins? Because meniscus.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I don't know the term break because I just keep going and going and going. So, but no matter what, during that fall process, I finished writing my book. I still did my podcast. And now what was happening?
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thank you. What was happening is everything when we go on this journey, and I'm sure you're the same way, you try a few things and you see what sticks and you figure out what you're very good at. And now after the book, I'm like, you know what? Screw it. My name means Battle Warrior. So I'm like, screw it, Battle Warrior Brands. And I just slid it together and ended up being the leading driver right now is the book, just because that's a different, it's a fresh item. But in general, my driver is my fitness supplements. So I'm like, which I love everything about it. I take every day. I even took them before I owned the company. And
right.
So I go do what I love to do, working out. Secondly, it's clothing. So like I love designing, I love creating. It's like I'm being back in my basement creating fish lures again. So like it's starting to not say unravel, it's starting to snowball where it's like the things that I love are actually gripping and taking off. And I'm actually looking at my bed right now. I'm actually in my studio apartment here recording with you, but I have apparel that's sitting on my bed right now because I like the touch and feel before it gets public. So like I'll take some samples and play. But that's what ended up happening with the book release was people are like, I was that kid that had issues. I barely read. I think I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, glanced through a few books. And then there's another one that stuck, which was, and I'm going to plug in Mike here, but Mike's Inner Circle. He's got an Inner Circle book. And he's part of Arte and all those other groups. And what ended up happening, I'm like, it's such a common sense way to be successful. You do this correctly, you're going to get this result. Go to the next chapter. You do this correctly, you're going to get this result. And as highly active and energetic, and I don't want to use the term lacked focus, not that. We're really extremely focused on certain things we love. So like if we want to accomplish one goal, we're very driven to get that done. I don't care if there's freaking squirrels in the tree, just get it done. And what ended up happening is I would go work. I would work on my own stuff. And I was just getting in this, I'm in the cycle of just crushing. And the best way of doing it, I didn't write this book for my critics. I really didn't care. This was just me using my past to help less people going forward. And it's my sobriety journey and adding in my faith into it and step by step on how I accomplished that. And what ended up happening is people that thought you couldn't do it, all of a sudden they see the book and they're like, wait a minute, you just released the book? Yeah.
And you got to have haters. It's one of the things that I tell the men of Psalm, and I tell their wives and everybody that's involved. And how Psalm came about is a very similar story, right? So I have a core business. And I'm a very big proponent on your one thing and mastering that one thing and then using that. And I'm not talking business necessarily on this episode, but using that as an investment vehicle to launch something that you can give to the world. Like that's just the way I look at things. When I wake up, it's a very easy scorecard. Did I leave the world a better place? If I did, boom. And every room I walk out of, that's how I filter everything that I do, right? And then when you become the best in the room, you've got to build a new room at the end of the day too. And none of us would ever go to a dentist who has jacked up teeth. So what I mean by that is that as a man, you have plenty of guys out there that are talking the talk, right? Like, but they're meeting the standard. They're not being that standard. And I see a lot of that crap out there, and it really pissed me off at that time. So what ended up happening is I come off that radio show, Chad, and it's something very similar. And my core business is flourishing, high 7-figure business. And at that time, I was just disenfranchised with what I saw the landscape that churches had to offer with men's groups, men's fraternities, whatever. And I was invited to come to speak. And I told my story in full, the masturbation, the cocaine, the Adderall, the lying. And they literally looked at me and they went back to their book. And I was like, this isn't working for me. And because I'm so mission driven, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I started mentoring one man out of the CrossFit gym. And I said, we're going to meditate in the middle of the floor where the CrossFitters can see us. We are going to do log PT. We're going to do things that God created us to truly do, the crazy stuff, the adventurous stuff. So we are going to develop this curriculum from ground up, from what I've learned from the SEALs, apply it here, but make it relative. So what we are basically going to build is going to be this organization that truly produces not just raw and real vulnerability, but brotherhood. And that's how SOM got its organic grassroots start, is outside of a CrossFit gym. And from there, what ended up happening is guys would come up to me. Some of the most successful men that you know on paper say, what are you guys doing? I want to be involved in that. I want more. I said, okay. So I capped it off at 9 men. I just said, all right, guys, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it for 10 months. And we're going to build this from the inside out, knowing that what I was doing was basically creating my reality to heal, because at that time, Ashley was done with me. The CrossFit gym was a dumpster fire that we had bought. We were putting more cash in it to cover payroll. My core business was pretty much floating everything else. And I burned through 2 business partners at that time, the radio show, graduated from Hell Week. I thought, I was like, oh my God, I've arrived. And that's the thing that I see so many men that, our world has done a really good job of selling comfort and finish lines and graduations and stuff like that. And that creates regression. And you see that in a lot of men's groups today. They could go through a 12-week program, but they've never worked on the root, or the thing that matters most that's going to help them 10x the results in their life. So it wasn't even called SOM at that point, or School of Man. And we were just being boys again. And we were developing this culture from the ground up that really let a man talk about whether it was truly his porn addiction, or it was something going on in his marriage or in his business. It didn't matter what it was, your deepest, darkest secrets, you could put it there. And you could be a man. You don't have to be politically correct. You don't have to cancel yourself or anything like that. And we did it all through training, as warriors should train. And that became the shared suffering that produced true brotherhood. And on the end of that, I said, you know what? We're going to put a crucible, a 55-hour crucible, bring in special forces, bring in SEALs to help us administer this as we go through this together. Because when I went through my experience, I didn't know anybody, right? And I was like, that to me is the catalyst of developing a true brotherhood. Like, I will not ever use that word. That is an earned word in our organization. And I'm a earned type of guy. And that's really how SOM ended up getting its start, is because I started creating my own reality. I needed it more than anybody. So as the head instructor, I also knew that I had to be the standard. And how I ended up winning Ashley's heart back is your network truly determines your net worth. We use that term so much when it comes to finances, and that is true, right? If a guy has been there and he's a real estate investment mogul, or he's launched businesses, he's scaled businesses, he's a successful leader, that's a different room. Then you have the guys that are spiritually wealthy. You have the guys that are physically wealthy, the guys that know how to treat their wives. They're the men that the wives dream of at night, but get to wake up to in the morning. They're how they treat their children. They're not absent, right? And then you ultimately become the tide that lifts the ship. And that's really what a lot of men are missing right now. That and extreme accountability, getting their jaw broke, because a lot of times when you break a dude's jaw, and I'm just talking proverbially, and you hold the line and you call him on his bullshit and you tell him what he needs to hear, not what he wants to hear, you're going to find out real quick if a man truly wants change and evolution in his life, or if he just wants to be the same man, because it's pretty easy to die. It's harder to live. And that's where SOM started taking its grassroots, and it became a catalyst for me, because it saved my marriage. And I'm, of course, still heavily involved, saved my marriage, 10x my business. It helped me connect with my children. I did not have a relationship with my kids until SOM came along, and Adam Pratt, we would have Warrior Box Wednesday. So you'd have to earn your Warrior Box, and it's still in existence of SOM. It's a very traditional piece for us. You earn it through a hard evolution. It could be 2-3 hours. Early in the morning, 0 dark 30, and it would be your book, your gear, a piece of equipment you would use for Crucible to start a fire or whatever. And my evolution that day that they put on, Adam Pratt showed up with 2 Captain American outfits. And I had one, my son had one, and we had a Nerf war. And we climbed ropes together. And that really actually launched my relationship with him, because I'd mentioned at the top of the podcast, like he's autistic, and we did not know that at the time. So that played, that little thing right there. If you would think that if that didn't happen, I believe that God, and by the way, got a phenomenal relationship with God now. If that little thing did not happen, number one, I don't know how Ashley and I would have made it these past 2 months, because life has thrown some knocks at the door and some haymakers at us. You know, your life is a test and your grade is the response as a man. But I wouldn't have the relationship and the empathy that I would and always have had with Landon, and why he is the way he is, and why God created him the way he is. And, you know, that's where I was so addicted to stress. Like I said, I had such a monkey mind. I was going 1,000 miles per hour. And then Psalm came along that I had to create. And now we have men in it that are across all walks of life, all make, model, and creed, from men that are worth over $100 million to a guy that's just bagging groceries that is involved in Psalm. And that's what I love. And you would never know. And you always got, and those who are listening, never take advice from anybody that's going to lead with their resume right out the gate. Like, your actions, a true measure of any man, and Chad can agree to this, is what can't be measured. It's the things that happen in the dark that matter most. And so, Chad, to relate to you and to all the listeners, that there's a lot of people out there right now that want to write a book, that want to launch a podcast, that have this infinity to do something more with their life. We're all searching one thing: it's freedom and fulfillment. And the biggest thing I can tell any of you is, number one, lose your mind. Like, don't focus on what anybody else thinks. Instead, you know, build a rocket ship to Mars like Elon Musk is doing, and flip the moon off on your way up, right? You have 86,400 seconds in your day, and you need to act on that. But lose your mind. And really, you know, a lot of people, what I see is they bring their upbringing in, and they don't even realize it, and it creates an upper limit effect. And Chad, you'll agree too. You can talk about law of attraction all you want. It's the law of action that is going to propel you. Don't focus on how many followers some influencer has, how many downloads a podcast have. If you have one person, that's how I filter everything. If you have one person that this has an impact on, my friend, you have done your job, and you've left the world a better place.
Yeah. And the thing that you're getting at is, you know, when someone walks up to you, if they've been through hell and back, because it's almost like you see, and I'm gonna use the term bald tires. It's not that, but like, you see the road.
That's a great analogy. You see
the road on them, not life. I mean, you just talk and you just see like the perspective, you know, I mean, just the breakdown of it. So
you become a Jedi Knight because you've learned how to convert your pain into your purpose and your promise. And well, think about the one person you see all the time that you rarely actually take a look in that person's eyes. That's you, until you start recognizing the moment of rebirth for yourself and being reborn, right? And you start looking at yourself in the mirror in a totally different way. And it becomes an intuition or a blessed impulse that you know immediately when a guy or a gal, it doesn't matter, is searching. You can pick them from across the room.
Yep.
Pick them from across the room.
You can read 2 seconds in their eyes.
Oh, 2 seconds. It's the window to the soul is the oldest adage that they talk about with when you look in someone's eyes. It's the windows to the soul. I mean, last weekend I noticed it across the room, a guy by the name of Paul, first time being introduced from Psalm. He's in Houston, comes up to this 3-day weekend called Rebirth 2.0. And I knew something was on him, and I made him. And I'm one of those people that I see it. You tell me, you're going to get up and you're going to talk about it, right? Because that honestly is a part of liberation and a part of your path. Sure enough, I had to do something with his dad. And this dude is a very successful guy. And it's just, but when you get in a room of not just like-minded men and women, you get in a room that people truly care, like you, Chad, and they see what you are doing, and you become, I've been made fun of, I've been mocked, I've been laughed at. When we launched SOM, all right, in the CrossFit gym, what's the funny thing is CrossFitters making fun of us, and CrossFit was born very similar. But people get very, very nervous on things that is just not common to them. So when you're doing so uncommon things, or you write the book, you publish the book, you do the podcast, they want to benchmark you on who you were at 25. When that is such a bad thing to do, right? Where you, the true change agent, you just barrel through because your why is so big, you cannot be taken off of your set point.
Absolutely, man. Like, I don't want to be a stat. Like,
Lord, no.
The two things that made me change is I don't want to, and especially when you watch someone die, and I don't want to go negative, dark this way, but when you look in their eyes, yeah, it's like when you look in their eyes, or when you look at that person, or you look at the event, you're like, oh my God, this person went down and they never had a shot to live their dream. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I fucking cannot be that person.
Yeah, it's a motivator. Well, it's called mortality motivation. I mean, that's a Stoic philosophy, and then you can find it in the Bible about learn to count your days, or learn to number your days. I don't think that's morbid, Chad. I think that we have made it morbid because, my goal in life is I'm chasing immortality, is to never be forgotten based upon the great things that I have done, right? And the contributions I have given to this world, because most of us come into this world as takers. It's what, honestly, I mean, that's how we're all bred to be. And that's how our society and culture, what they pump into us institutionally and everything else. And I don't find it to be morbid at all. I find it to be a motivating thing. My wife doesn't like me talking about it, but I mean, even when I'm weekly on Sundays, I mean, in the event God lets me live to 75, I literally have 1,919 weeks left. That's not too many weeks. That gets my motor running at on the things that matter most, because a lot of men mistake movement with progress. And then they get all this insight and they do nothing with it. So it becomes worthless, and that's just the truth. Like, a 1% man in my book understands that he's perfectly flawed, but he does something with the insight. He turns it into action. He converts it into fuel. He writes the book, or he has the conversations, and he keeps going back for more, and he continues to produce the results that he desires. And he only competes with himself. He dominates his former self, and he runs towards his future self. And when you lock in on that, you become unstoppable. You just become unstoppable, man.
Yeah. People are saying straight out, they're like, dude, you're on fire, you're on fire, you're on fire. I'm like, bro, I'm just producing. and I don't want to say it that way. Like, I'm looking at the love of the game, the love of the climb, not the love of the lifestyle of the cards and all that fancy shit. It's like, no, who can I help now?
That stuff comes, I can talk business all day. I can talk about how you can increase your sales, become just a marketing giant with what I do in my core business. And in SOM, we've really, over the past 4.5 years, more so because our model is so different and it's very unique. There's only one model like it, and you're not going to find that unless you go to the SEAL teams. But we meet men where they are, right? Like, we meet men where they are. There's a fellowship track. There's our fuel track. We have our home delivery system. You've got the actual School of Man. You got the 1% Man project. You got Raising Men. So you meet men where they are. And the point I'm trying to make about that is that, and I said it earlier, like, I want people to dream. Too many men think small. Too many men think average. We're bred to be average. We're bred to strive to be in the middle, to be in the middle class. Well, middle means average to me. And I'm obsessed with not being average. But that paycheck, that money, because we're all enamored by money, right? Well, 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. The average American has close to $9,000 of credit card debt. That's modern day slavery, to be totally just calling it how I see it, right? We're all seeking freedom. I keep going back to that. So from the School of Money aspect, like even with what we teach in SOM, is, man, it goes back to like the bling, the shiny stuff, all that good stuff. Hey, we want you to upgrade your lifestyle. No one teaches anybody how to grow their income. They teach you. Nobody does that. No one talks about it. Dave Ramsey's going to teach you how to get out of debt.
Yeah.
Which, I
was going to say fucking Ramsey tells you to just get rid of everything.
Yeah. Just live on wheatgrass and just, hey, just get out of debt. And I'm not saying there's bad, he's talking to that middle class.
That perfect class. Yeah.
And I understand it from a business perspective. Anyway, where I'm going with this is that every person that you interview, every person that you come across, the most successful people in the world are going to tell you, and you can see it, like they're going to make sure they surround themselves with people that they love to do life with, that they're going to give back. All the planes, the cars, the men that do things the right way aren't lonely. That's what I'm trying to say. They're not lonely, and they're fulfillment seekers. They understand that, hey, money, there's a plenty amount of money, plenty amount of success. We're abundant thinkers because men create it, machines print it at the end of the day. All that other stuff, you can take it because you can only accumulate so much stuff, but right here in your heart. And that's what I started learning. And I said it earlier, when I started flipping the frame and started going after fulfillment, I started achieving everything that I want, because you end up starting to understand, and no one talks about this, Chad, is like, okay, what are your goals? How much are you going to produce? How are we going to get your business to 7 figures, then to 8 figures? Or how are we going to scale that? Well, what are you willing to sacrifice, right? Like, what are you willing to give up in order to go up in other parts of your life, right? Are you willing to give up porn to make sure you have the intimacy with your wife to go up in that relationship, right? What about your body? What about your being? What about your spiritual world, right? That you can honestly, you're never going to see on paper the financial gain, but I promise you it's there. It's mixed in there somewhere, right? So anyway, man, I'm glad that you're kicking ass and taking names and that you're on fire. And it's even more empowering to me. And hence why I'm fired up that, celebrate yourself for sure. Be grateful for it, but just continue to grind and just go back to being humble and hungry, dude.
Yeah, that's my number one goal right now. And to be honest, I love achieving things without the public knowing. And I don't want to say I like just do my own thing. And the less I have the cameras on me, I mean, I love the spotlight. Don't get me wrong. I love talking and speaking and all that stuff, but like the right spotlight. So like, I really don't care what the neighbors think, what I'm doing, man. I'm just out there doing stuff for my own good. Yeah. So, but where can all my listeners go find you for all the classes online? Just look at any information you got.
Yeah, no. And I appreciate you having me on, Chad. I really enjoy it. So the best way to find us, of course, is on social media at the School of Man. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. We're just really getting on the LinkedIn. We're not quite dancing yet on TikTok, but we do have a few things there. But where you can find all of our programs, the easiest way to do is go to our link tree, and that's linktr.ee/School of Man. So that's the best place to do it, because we have so many programs. You, of course, can go to our website, schoolofman.live. We also have a podcast, a book, School of Man book, Living, Loving Legacy, A Man's Guide to Living, Loving Legacy. You'll hear a lot of testimony for other men that are in SOM. There are no finish lines in our world. And man, that's the best way for us to give back. So I can't thank you enough, Chad.
No problem, man. You have a great day. Actually, good evening, or great evening. And man, let's keep it going, man. I'll stay in touch.
Yeah, right on, Chad.
All right. Thank you, man.
See you.